This is the Dane Moore NBA podcast brought to you by Prize Picks, coming at you late Tuesday evening. It's February 13th after the Wolves' 121-109 win over the Blazers out here in Portland. I got Kyle Theige here with me. We just got back from Moda Center. Another late night pod, Kyle. You ready?
Just a Jimmy Butler meme. Man, just getting a little exhausted.
Oh, yeah. You cover one game.
I've oversaturated the market here with my voice. Did a little Flagrant House earlier today, but no, it was good. It was good to be back in a locker room, especially, locker rooms after wins are always a little more fun and vibrant. But it was also cool. You and I were talking about this on the way there. Just a year ago, they had another one of these kind of back-to-back in Portland 2-game sets. It was December, I think, 2022 technically, but the Wolves got spanked in both of those.
Right.
And to just kind of see the progression of how far they've come, but also, there's some eerily similarities between what the Blazers did and trading their franchise guy and how quickly it's just crumbled. I mean, talking to Blazers people tonight, like they're in a full rebuild now, and that's all you and I really knew growing up, getting our, cutting our teeth, covering this team and doing stuff. And now to see the Wolves are that contending team that has a lot of vets and has a lot of stars. So really cool night. Obviously, second night of a back-to-back. And it kind of looked like that to start. A little 7-0 run for Portland to kick it off. But thought the Wolves kind of rebounded and set themselves up a little bit. And then it got super stale. And then it was the Nickeil Alexander-Walker game. So I don't know where you want to start. But definitely some fun topics to talk about on a game that I know probably a lot of people missed back home in the Midwest. But yeah, just a fun game with, Ant and Nickeil and some of the cool stuff that you journalists and reporters all learned about. So, yeah, where do you want to start?
Yeah, I think Ant and Nickeil are the headliners in this one, and Ant was the body blows throughout the game, and then Nickeil kind of knocked him out at the end. I think the place to start is with Ant. I haven't, had a chance to look at all of Ant's 40-point games from his career, but I have to imagine this is one of, if not the most efficient 40-point games of his career. He was 12 for 19 from 2-point range, 4 for 8 from 3-point range, 41 points in a game where nobody else on this team scored 20. He drove this thing, and I think what is maybe most noteworthy is the fact that he played. He was a late addition to the injury report, which is never normally a good sign when a player is put on the injury report day of. Ant actually, that seems to happen like a good amount where it'll be like 2 o'clock. You'll be like, okay, injury update, Anthony Edwards is now questionable. And he kind of has this thing where he's like, something in the body isn't feeling right. It's oftentimes maybe in a difficult stretch in the schedule, a lot of games in a row, or in tonight's case, a back-to-back. But he made the decision to play this game. It sounds like some of that, just the wear and tear, that jumper's knee thing. We asked him about it after the game, and he said it was just kind of that again, which is, I think they call that a tendinopathy, or that's what they did when it was really bothering him 2 years back. But he makes the decision to kind of play through the pain of that knee tendinopathy. And I mean, butterfly effect, whatever. But if he doesn't play in this game, then you just look at what everyone else did in this game. It wasn't a good cat game. Rudy's box score looks pretty good. The normal 16 and 15, 7 of 10 from the field, but it was not one of the cleanest offensive games for sure from Rudy. And Ayton and a lot of the other Blazers guys kind of got going offensively. He wasn't the defensive stalwart, we're kind of used to him being night to night. So I say that all to mean they kind of needed this 41 from Ant, and he delivered in a time when he wasn't 100%. We think about, back in the first 2 years of his career, he was, I mean, his words, not mine, trash on the second nights of back-to-backs, and it's good to see him kind of make that stride. It's a professional step of a star player on a good team, and yeah, he really delivered in this one.
Well, like you said, in the NBA, it's pretty common knowledge now that if you get added to the injury report day of, you're probably not going to play that night. So when he pops up as questionable with that knee stuff, you're like, second night, they get in last night, 2 a.m. And then, a little behind the scenes here, but then the coaches always do a pregame media availability. So about 5:30, we got to hang out and talk to Finch a little bit. And when someone asked him, like, is Ant in tonight, that's when you usually get, like, the clarification. And even at that point, he was like, we don't know. Kind of game time decision. And that's when you're like, oh, if he's added to the injury report and Finch is like, I don't really know. And then you're kind of watching him do shoot around or pre stuff, and he's not looking great. He's kind of moving slowly. You didn't think he was going to play?
Yeah, just watching him do his warm-ups, it was not the pace and speed. And that's not what his warm-ups normally look like before the game. And so I was kind of sitting there like, I think he's just giving this testing it right now. But if you would have asked me at 6:15, I'd have been like, no, I don't think Anthony Edwards is going to play in this game.
And then he had 41. You know what I mean? Like, just 16 to 27. What's cool about him, and talking to him after the game and stuff too, about, he, like you said, he was trash in those first couple of years on back-to-backs. He had no juice. I think, again, tonight, got a little poking and prodding from maybe a Mike Conley to be like, hey, you're not that hurt. Like, kind of suck it up and get out there and play. But tonight was just Ant the shooting guard, or Ant the scorer, right? Like, he only had 2 assists, did have a couple steals and a block, just a couple turnovers. But he is becoming, at still age 22, what do you need from me that night? And tonight, Jaden was awful. Carl had 3 fouls early, and for the third straight game doesn't play in the fourth, but also doesn't play in the second, basically kind of non-existent. And it was just kind of like, hey, tonight, Ant, we just need you to score and tally as many points as possible. And it's cool to watch this kid, I still think he's a kid, be able to do that, right? Like last night you needed him to be a little more facilitator or play defense. Tonight it was just get buckets, just help us outscore a team that if we can just kind of give them a couple body blows, they'll probably kind of cave in, and that's what he did. So 5 for 5 from free throw line. I don't think, again, anyone – it was a really tough whistle tonight, by the way. Like, I think the whole team was flustered by Finch was pretty steamy too, but 4 from 8 from 3. He was I'm just going to shoot my way out of this. And like you said, if he doesn't play or they give him the night off and they took a long view of it and be like, we don't need him tonight, they do probably lose that game. And what does that say about this team, all that stuff? I don't know, man. These back-to-backs are always just a challenge. But despite what other players did tonight, and we'll get to it, without Ant and those 41 points, they needed every one of them to close that thing out and to kind of keep this thing rolling. So I think that's just the growth for him, right? Like, I think having all these vets around him being like, if you want to be a superstar, it's not just about consistency. It's about doing it in, like, every night and doing it at the highest level. So he was great, plus 16, and without him, I don't think the Nikhil Walker game even happens.
You called him Nikhil Walker.
Yeah, because I've just been listening to too many trash NBA TV commentators that aren't Jim and Grady, Nikhil Alexander Walker, a.k.a. Popsicle.
It really is a defining part of this team's identity that they don't rest guys and that they do play in these situations, and they probably have 3 or 4 or 5 more wins this season because of that. Like, they don't, when it's close, they don't choose to rest. And that is not, it kind of starts at the top of the organization. Finch has talked about that for 2 years, about being a team that plays and how important that is. And now in a season where obviously this team is competing for the 1 seed and the margin is so thin there, having that be a big part of who you, that's what Ant said. We were asking about it, like the decision to play is like, that's just who we are as a team, as an organization. I got to be ready to go. And when he was saying in the locker room afterwards, I was thinking about how, you and I could sit down right now and rattle off like 8 pretty solid bullet points of what the identity of this team is now. And I guess you reference a year ago when you're out here for the Portland game and they lose to them twice. Or you just think about last season as a whole. It's like, what would have that list of bullet points been? And that, to me, just like big picture with this team is, And and there's arguments to be made that maybe they should rest guys more often or whatever, but they do have staples of their identity from a strategy standpoint, from being a defensive team, from how they play offense. Like, they're the number 1 seed in the Western Conference because they know who they are, and they were a 500 team last season because they didn't, and to me, that's as big of a change for this team as anything this season, and it's why they're sitting clearly atop the Western Conference right now. I think that's a huge part of it, is having that identity.
And I always just take like the sappy view with Ant, right? This is his 4th year, and every year of this journey or his progression, he's had really solid vets around him. I mean, we were talking to some Blazers people about like Scoot in his rookie year and having like Malcolm Brogdon around and how valuable that's been for him. But, I mean, Mike Conley didn't have the greatest night tonight. He was just like a lot of other starters, just kind of tired from that big win in the Clippers. He did have 3 blocks, which was incredible from him. But he's had a really cool post game. And, again, this is a road game for Dane, so Dane doesn't have all the cool audio setups. But he just talked about that Ant's, a kid at heart, and sometimes he'll come in and be like, oh, I'm tired. Again, he's 22. I know that he makes millions of dollars. I know that he's awesome, but he's still like, oh, like who among us is not just after doing one thing being like, oh, I'm kind of tired. And Mike had a cool story about how their hotel rooms are right next to each other, and he saw Ant walk into his room last night or this morning and was kind of limping a little bit, and Mike was like, you're not limping, like you're not hurt, like just kind of tough it out, like lock in, and it's just a little bruise. And Ant, being the competitor that he is, took that to heart, and again ends up playing in a game that without him they lose, and with him 41 points in the win. So I just think having those vets around, Kyle and stuff, I know we probably lean into that too much sometimes, but what Mike Conley does for this team and changing the culture, it's not just one person, but he does so much to get these guys. I mean, Mike Conley is the one guy on the team that should just take as many nights off as he wants.
And he doesn't.
He
doesn't want to.
No.
Yeah. I mean, I remember talking to some people before that crazy Orlando Boston back-to-back.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, is everybody just going to rest in this Boston game? Like, what's it going to be? And then it was Mike ultimately rested, and what I'd heard was it was a real point of intention for Mike Conley this season at 36 years old to play in all 82 games. Like, that was a real goal for him. And so when we talk about that identity, and we obviously so many things of the identity I think do come back to your leaders, and then particularly maybe your veteran leaders. And again, if we made that list of the bullet points of what this Timberwolves team's identity are, we could have a sub-bullet under each one of those of how Mike Conley influences that to be a part of it. And like you said, even in the games where on the box score it doesn't stand out as Mike Conley having a good game, though you always kind of scroll over to the far right column, and the plus-minus is almost always a positive for him. But it's that stuff. It's taken a young 22-year-old under your arm after a game in LA the night before, and you got to fly up to Portland and be like, hey, yeah, we're trying to be the 1 seed. 2, we're trying to get to the All-Star break on a high note, which I think is a real opportunity for this team right now. Like, we're going to talk about it a little bit later, but starting with this Houston game, about 10 days ago, 2 weeks back, whatever, I think this team is starting to turn a corner. And a lot of that has to do with the offense and that starting to come around, a little bit of better shot selection, whatever. But to be able to kind of run off these last 7, 8, 9 games into, I guess it'd be 7 games into the break, starting with that Houston one, winning 6 of them, if they can win the next one against the Blazers, having your only loss be the Chicago loss, which was obviously bad, but to kind of be able to go into the All-Star break on a really high note, a note that feels kind of like when this team was at its peak, sort of in, I'd always say like the peak of this season was kind of the 2 weeks surrounding Thanksgiving. They're starting to feel like that team again, and being able to sustain that into the All-Star break is big. Not folding a game against the lowly Blazers tonight, even though it was a back-to-back, that matters. And being able to come out focused, a little bit more rested on Thursday and win going in the All-Star break. I really think that matters for a team who obviously, has some aspirations here to make, to take this season to go as far as it can. Let me grab our first ad break here, Kyle, and then we can move over to Nickeil Alexander-Walker. Today's show is brought to you by Your Home Improvement Company, another one of those local sponsors that we're really hoping that those of you who might have a home improvement need do consider. Right, if you do have a bathroom renovation on your to-do list at home, or you need new windows, do consider Your Home Improvement Company. They do have a deal in February going where it's 30% off of a complete bathroom renovation that they can get done in 24 hours. So it can be something you're ready to do. Set up a consultation and execute quickly. That's 30% off a bathroom renovation. They also have a buy 2 windows, get 2 free deal. Again, that's just something I know that many of you are going to need to do to your homes at some point. And if you are considering doing that, do consider Your Home Improvement Company. You can go to yhic.com to set up a consultation about what it is you might want to be doing to your home improvement project, or you can call 844-270-7180 with all Your Home Improvement Company projects. It is no money down, no interest until 2025. Your Home Improvement Company, where it's your home made better. And then, Kyle, quickly, today's show is also brought to you by Prize Picks, prizepicks.com, the Prize Picks app, another sponsor of the show. They have a promo code. You can use the promo code Dane for a $100 sign-up bonus. I always feel like it's kind of fun in these where they play the same team 2 times in a row to sort of, you just watched this Wolves team play the Blazers. It's probably going to be the same 9 guys in the Wolves rotation, probably pretty much the same 9-10 guys in the Blazers rotation. So you can kind of know where maybe the weak spots are, where the Wolves can take advantage of the Blazers, or maybe, Karl didn't play well in this game. Jaden didn't play well in this game. Is there something behind that? I think those are the ones where it's kind of fun to put yourself behind a prize pick there. So prizepicks.com, Prize Picks app. Take a look. Maybe you're listening to this on Wednesday or Thursday morning before the game against the Blazers. But take a look at what the props are set at for that Wolves Blazers game on Thursday. And again, if you want to create an account, do so using the promo code Dane at prizepicks.com or on the Prize Picks app. Let's talk about Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Kyle. What stood out to me in this game live while it was going, and in the fourth quarter where he made those 3 big threes that really established a double-digit lead, where you go, okay, I think the Wolves have this. This isn't going to be a game that slips away in the fourth quarter, or they lose to an inferior team, whatever. It stood out to me that that's so much what that Celtics game felt like too, which was also the back-to-back. Orlando flying in the same day to Boston, and Nickeil came in and delivered in this game. And one of his, I think, biggest assets to this team is when they are flat, even when they have an excuse, kind of playing a super physical game against the Clippers last night and then coming here to play another game the next day. Nickeil is never flat. Really, that's not hyperbole. Like, when does Nickeil Alexander-Walker not inspire energy in this team? He might have a bad shooting game here or there. He might have a game with some turnovers or something, but having that player that you can go to off your bench to, I guess it's just the cliche term, be a spark, I think has proven to be an invaluable asset that he brings to this team, on top of the night-to-night defensive impact that he has that is statistically off the chart and up there with any perimeter defender in the league. Really, what Nickeil's able to do just consistently and in that 3-and-D role, it's just really making a difference on the Wolves this season. And I don't know if we're doing the pecking order of who's most behind this win, it's Ant number one, and pretty clearly Nikhil was the second most valuable, important winning player in this game tonight. What stood out to you about Nikhil's game?
Yeah, when you're talking there, I was thinking about actually rescinding what we said in the first segment, because as 41 points, it is what it is. You needed all 41 of those tonight from Ant. But I don't know. I might actually give my participation trophy MVP award to Nikhil, because as much as those 41 points obviously kind of helped crutch the Wolves, he had 18 in the first, right? So that first quarter, they kind of, after that little slow start, they kind of came out firing. But it was a 1-point game going into the fourth, and that's like the whole dreaded, don't give the young team at home like a scent that they can maybe pull this thing out. Don't give them any hope. And despite how good Ant was, I mean, Nikhil hit shot after shot that, I mean, I was kind of joking with you. The Wolves basically played 3 good minutes of basketball, and they won the game by double digits. Yeah. And all 3 of those minutes were all Nikhil. I mean, just corner 3 after corner 3 after corner 3, and then that kind of, he called it the cherry on top, slide to the left, 3 in front of the Wolves bench. It's truly impressive. I mean, I always joke, it seems like in a big spot, wherever Nikhil catches the ball, he's shooting 100% in like clutch moments, because it's just the ball swings around to him. It's never been the prettiest form. It probably won't be the prettiest form, but it's just real consistent. And they needed, and he's also defensively, he was awesome, I thought, on Simons. Yeah. Simons finished with 20 points, but 6 of 19. He had to work for everything he got.
Well, and Jaden wasn't there tonight.
Other than being there, he was literally non-existent.
Right.
Didn't score. Didn't really play a lot of defense. 2 rebounds, 1 block. But it's just I don't know. Obviously, our friend of the show and our friend Chris Hine wrote a really cool piece on Nikhil a couple weeks ago on the Star Tribune about just kind of person he is. I mean, he's a 25-year-old, but he's a 55-year-old kind of mentality. And tonight, before the game, getting to go into the locker room, and it's a little more informal, but guys are on their phones. They were watching the last Wolves-Blazers game, and Josh Minot was holding court talking about all the cool stuff he did. But Nikhil was just on a training table reading a book. And it's just, he is a really cool story. Was a little bit of a revenge game, right? He was traded to the Blazers for all of 24 hours before he was kind of dumped to the Utah. But
I think both of his highest scoring games this season are now against Utah, and this tonight against Portland.
And you can tell too that this is, in my opinion, in the 7 years I've done this, like the closest knit locker room. But he's got some. I mean, he's not the type of guy that's going to say compliments, I don't think, that are just fake. And he said tonight too, he's like, I don't use this loosely, but Mike is like a big brother to me. Like and those two had a funny little thing post game about who has the best hands on the team and stuff. But they needed every part of Nikhil in a game that, as it got, 12 minutes left in the fourth, 10 minutes, 8 minutes, you just had that same feeling you had against Charlotte, that same feeling you had against the Spurs of another bad team playing down to the competition. And literally before you knew it, it was just over. And it was mostly because of Nikhil. And to do it all, by the way, after he had like a really bad turnover and stuff, and Ann talked about this post game with Leah Bielsen, that to turn the ball over in a tight spot and then just kind of forget about it and go next play mentality and then go 3-3-3-3. You can't say enough about his performance. And
to do the turnover, right, which is the bad turnovers. Those are all the staples of the fourth quarter losses this season, right? That they, when they have crumbled in those situations. So to make one of those plays that kind of maybe starts deteriorating the foundation under you, I think the game was close. Portland took a lead right around there, but it was a close game when he made that turnover, and then to follow that up confidently with 3 straight corner threes. Huge. He's even got his little 3-point celebration. I meant to ask him about that afterwards, but like he's clicking. And we've done this in like 15 different ways this year, to talking about who Nickeil Alexander-Walker is and has become through sort of the turmoil of the first 4 years of his career. But it's almost like that is just the past at this point, given how consistent he's been for 50 plus games thus far this season. Like the expectation, actually, I think from Nickeil Alexander-Walker now is not only that you're going to get the effort, but that there's going to be pretty little variance in his production. Yeah, he was 3 for 3 from 3 against the Clippers last night, and then 5 for 6 tonight. Yeah, it's not going to be a 90% 3-point shooter, but it's like one of my favorite things about Rudy is how little variance there is to his game, sort of night to night. There's a consistency to what he brings to it, and Nickeil might be the next most consistent player on this team night to night of what you can get from them. And Ant and Cat's roles, just as offensive fulcrums, are going to be volatile. Like, I don't know, Ant probably has 8 or 9 games this season, single-digit scoring, right? And Carl, like tonight, sometimes gets into, foul trouble, right? Or they're loading up on those guys and taking that away. To have not only Rudy Gobert, Mike Conley, but also Nickeil Alexander-Walker of just kind of these pawns you can put on the board and know exactly what you're going to get out of them, I think that is in the aggregate, a really big needle mover for this team.
84-83 to start the fourth quarter. Nickeil actually fouled Scoot Henderson attempting a 3. Scoot hit them all, and it was the first time. So it was 86-84 Portland. I think it was the first time the Blazers had led since the first quarter, like early in the first. So again, you kind of have that wave of, oh my God, here it goes again, right? The achy knees, that we talk about in the past. And then next possession, Nickeil has a turnover. And then to just kind of, again, I don't know why I love that stuff, but just to wipe those plays away and to not worry about the scar tissue or the Timberwolves PTSD. And then it was Nas had a bucket, and then it was Nickeil 3, Nickeil 3, Nickeil 3, Nickeil 3. And all of a sudden it's 102-90 4 minutes later. And it's like, oh, this is over.
Right.
It's over. So, and also too, just like as you and I were watching a bunch of other games yesterday, just think about how much a team, I mean, they don't have any assets, but like how much a team like the Phoenix Suns would just love to have a Nickeil Alexander-Walker on their team, right? Like he might be the 4th best player on that team, or some of these other playoff contenders.
I would have loved to see what Alex Caruso would have got if he would have gotten traded, what he would have gotten traded for, because I continue to think that's like the best comp for him. The 3-point shooting is actually, I think Caruso's having a really good 3-point shooting season too. But my only point behind that is like that is literally an extremely valuable commodity around the league right now. Like I think Nickeil Alexander-Walker is better than Royce O'Neal probably.
Oh yeah.
Right now. Not to take away from that. I think he'll help Phoenix too, but I thought about that at the deadline, and obviously the Wolves were never going to move him, but there's a lot of teams around the league who could just use what Nickeil is the kind of perfect 3-and-D player right now, which is just crazy that he's become that.
Yeah, dude, he's Marcus Smart with a library card for them. You know what I mean? Like he's a little bit of their heart and soul too, and I as much as Naz Reid will probably always hold the mantle, I think fans see it too, and he just goes out there and he never complains about fouls, even on that Scoot Henderson 3 I was talking about. Like, it's kind of a questionable call, but he doesn't show up officials, especially on a team that has a lot of guys that kind of do that. He just, I don't know. It's just to be 25 years old and to be that mature and to kind of know his story, right? Like, I mean, I was third quarter, I was like on his Wikipedia page, but like after he got drafted as a lottery pick, like he played with like the Erie Hawks for a hot second. Like he played in the G League. He was basically, a bust for all intents and purposes, and to recover and to, I remember last year he talked about that the trade to Minnesota saved him. And those words were kind of like, not to be sappy, but like really powerful. And he echoed that same sentiment at Media Day about how a lot of perspective, a lot of, thinking about what he wants his career to be like and accepting a role. Mike Conley talked about that tonight. Is like Nickeil is accepting what this team needs, and he's hitting on all cylinders. So Ants 41 kind of got them to the end of the game, but it was those Nickeil threes that, like I said, all of a sudden I just looked up and it was a 17-point game when Luka Garza was checking in.
It is kind of getting to the point, right? There's the narrative with Jaden McDaniels, not narrative, the idea, which I think there's very likely truth to, that Jaden McDaniels could do a lot more with a lot more usage that this team just doesn't have to give him, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's kind of that's maybe true for Nickeil Alexander-Walker as well. He probably gets even less chance to like showcase his bag or be able to do more than just the classic 3-and-D stuff on offense. But we have seen him, operate in pick and roll functionally as a passer. And like if the big is staying home on cat or something, his ability to get all the way to the basket and finish, he's become a better decision maker in those spots. Like we do need to remember that Nickeil Alexander-Walker is like came in as a prospect with a high level of talent and a high level of idea of what he what he could become. He's oddly at 25 not being asked to do what he was asked to do when he was 20 years old coming in the league. He was kind of given more bandwidth back then, and it's just there isn't room for it on this team right now. But Nikhil's going to be on the team again. He signed again for next season, and we'll see how the roster all moves. But there's a world that in 12 more months from now, we're like, what has Nickeil stacked on top of this part of his game? I do think there's, I don't know if we're just scratching the surface, but there's definitely more ceiling to Nickeil Alexander-Walker's game that I'm interested to see how that just develops.
Just an awesome use of the 6th overall pick by Minnesota to draft him in 2019. Some will say it was probably Jarrett Culver, but I mean, it is crazy to kind of look back at that draft and like Jarrett Culver, Jackson Hayes, Romeo Langford. Like there were just guys again that I don't know. It's probably now we're 20 minutes into Valentine's Day. Happy Wednesday. But I do think that not only in the basketball sense or just in any realm of life, he understood at an early age that I need to accept my role. Like if he was still gunning to be like, yeah, I'm 25, like I'm the shit. Like I'm a guy. Like they just don't know it yet. Right? You see a lot. Not to harp on Jalen Noel, but I sometimes wonder if that's why Jalen Noel just never could find a role and accept being that role and not trying to be a 25 point per game scorer. So it's really cool. The Wolves have really obviously developed now an awesome bench of guys like him, guys like Naz Reid. I don't know if we'll get into it, but like Kyle Anderson tonight was plus 29 off the bench. He's had 14 assists in the last 24 hours, 0 turnovers. Finch said tonight that feels like Kyle's kind of got his swag back a little bit.
Mm-hmm. He had an interesting little line off of that too. He goes, sometimes guys, when the trade deadline is looming, kind of have their low point of the season, and once that's kind of out of or in the rearview mirror, right? It can kind of allow them to become themselves again. He was pretty clearly intimating the idea that Kyle was struggling with some of that. It was it was no joke that it was a possibility that Kyle Anderson could have gotten, moved at the deadline. He's not. I think it's also they've affirmed that his role is still his role, even though Monte Morris is, in the mix. And I think it will still be the Kyle Anderson role will still be the Kyle Anderson role, even if they add a buyout guy. I think any buyout guy that comes in is going to be on the outside looking into the rotation, and Kyle Anderson is going to remain in the rotation. And obviously that's because Finch has, just a significantly higher belief in Kyle Anderson than I think a lot of people do, externally. They believe Kyle can be this player that he has been against Kawhi Leonard and the Clippers on Monday, and then again tonight as well. Let's grab another break and we'll keep going. I want to focus on the offense a little bit. It was I kind of picked up on one of those cool little trend things with the Wolves offense too. So we'll grab another break and get back and talk about that with Kyle. All right, Kyle. I thought it was really interesting how Finch kind of unveiled that the Wolves have a new strategy for closing games, and it is to have the offense be in front of them in second halves. When you are a road team, you get to choose which way you're going to start the game, which means you get to choose which way you are going to end games. And it's super common, like across the league. It's almost every single game, every single team chooses to have their defense be in front of their bench where the coach is to kind of be calling out the coverages and managing that, kind of hyper fixating on the defense a little bit. Rudy Gobert, what came out tonight when we were asking some questions was Rudy Gobert has kind of been pining for the Wolves to flip that so they have their offense in front of them at the end of games. And I mean, we could get into how that just kind of makes a lot of sense given that this is the number one defensive team in the league and has been a team that's been below average offensively thus far this season. But I mean, help me tell that story and what stood out to you about that sort of shift that this team has made.
This is a massive story. You know what I mean? Like in terms of,
I mean, it's kind of interesting. They did it right after Rudy came to the coaches again to do it after the Chicago game where they blew another fourth quarter because the offense was in shambles there. And yeah, now they did it the Milwaukee game. They did the Clippers game, and they did it tonight against Portland. Sorry, I cut you off. But
no, you didn't. I don't really have much to say on this. I was just going to let you keep cooking. I think, because we were talking to Jim and Grady before the game, was it maybe Grady that tipped everyone kind of off to this?
Yeah. I was not putting that together myself, and Grady pointed that out.
And again, maybe this is for 12 total listeners, but I just love this stuff because this is like a story that has been organically developed by the people that cover the team and the people that everyone listens to, that you guys notice this, that, yeah, a handful of games ago, all of a sudden the Wolves are going on a different basket in the second half. And it's like, I didn't even notice it, right? So Grady points it out, and then the line of questioning tonight from all of us, but pregame and postgame and talking to other people with the team, it was like a real strategic thing that Rudy was adamant about, and I think Rudy brought it up originally, and maybe the coaching staff or the organization, whatever, just kind of scoffed at it, and then he's like, no, like, we should try this. And Mike had some cool quotes about it. Ant, I think, had the best quote that was basically just like talking about how we can hear the plays. Like when Finch is calling out plays, like if we're attacking on that basket in the second half, we hear what Finch is wanting us to do. And joked about how when they're going the other way and they didn't hear the plays, or Finch would get pissed at him because he couldn't hear the plays. And then just having like the energy from the bench and the vibes when you hit a big three and, late game, hit a three, dap up your teammates and stuff. It's a weird random story that's part of the 82 game, novel of this season. But it's crazy because it's like kind of has a major impact on how this team is starting to play basketball.
It just makes sense.
Yeah, it's crazy. Rudy Gobert is one of the coolest fucking players on the earth. Like he comes up with, he's really, really smart. And again, he is one of us now. So like I appreciate him and I would go to war for him. And when he wasn't here, you're like, that guy's a big weirdo. But he is so detail oriented to notice that. And I mean, I do think it has played a really, you keep talking about, that Houston Rockets game and like, are they starting to figure out the offense a little bit? I know points per game is not the be-all, end-all or a really good metric, but the Wolves have now scored 120-plus points in 4 consecutive games. Like, when you factor that in with this defense that travels, you're kind of starting to figure it out.
Yeah, well, and then I think Chris asked Ant, he was just like, and are you guys just like okay defensively? Like you don't need that meticulous coaching of the having the defense be right in front of you on the bench. He's like, yeah, we have fucking Rudy Gobert, quote. He goes, we don't need them talking to us on defense. He's doing all the talking. Again, it makes sense from the defensive side. This team's kind of got it taken care of defensively, 90% of games. Offensively, I mean, a lot of games they do not have it taken care of offensively, and in fourth quarters in particular, they don't. So, yeah, maybe it seems like a small thing, and Finch kind of laughed about it. Like he's like, I don't really totally see the value in it, but what Finch said was, what I like most about it is it made Rudy really happy, and a happy Rudy is a good Rudy for us. Again, you're right. It's totally one of those 82 game sort of stories, but given how much this team has turned the ball over in fourth quarters and just dried up offensively, I mean, they're just a group that needs coaching offensively. You just see that watching the games in the midst of it. They need for a team that doesn't have like specific structures of where they start all their offensive possessions, like they do need a little bit more guidance. Anybody watching this team this season knows that they need a little bit more offensive guidance. This is a way to be able to do that. And I think, whether it is for the coaching or just having the bench there right next to them, I do think there's something to it. And I think it's, again, telling part of the story about this team starting to turn finally like a corner offensively. It's these 3 games with whatever the offense in front of them in the second half, but the offense has been better overall recently, and it's not all that. It's managing the ball a little bit more. I was just kind of like looking through the course of the game. I'm like, oh, this is interesting. Like, this is a game where the other team has more turnovers than the Wolves. And you kind of look at some of the other numbers, the field goal percentage and this and that, and you're like, well, the Blazers about shooting the same as the Wolves are. Everything's almost the same, but the Wolves have a 10-point lead because they haven't turned the ball over as much and because they're getting the free throw line at a higher rate than them. It's these things that we forget sometimes are like really meaningful, low-hanging fruit of just having an extra 5 possessions or something in the game than your opponent does. That makes a difference, and they're doing that more offensively right now, and we're starting to see the offense globally tick up a little bit. And they've changed their shot selection in the last 5 or 6 games, and we're seeing the efficiency of their shooting tick up a little bit. Like, they're fine. This is what we've been saying for like 2 months. They're like, what are these little marbles we can put into the cup that start filling it up offensively and make it make more sense? It was never just one thing. Yeah, we could point to the turnovers, but they have to find, to be the team they want to be, they need to get better at 5, 6 different things offensively. And I feel like for the first time this season, or at least the first time in a couple months, I'm like, all right, this team seems close to being there.
But again, it's like the perfect NBA story because this season is so damn long. And being out here with the team and everyone around them this week, you remember just how much time these guys spend together, right? So I don't know why I harp on that so much. I just, they spend more time together than like any other coworkers do. They're just literally living together as one big family. And the month of January will kind of forever be, imprinted in my mind of this month where, the smartest people covering this team and all the fans and stuff were, this offense is broken. Like, what are they going to do for this offense? And I'll dial up the Dane Moore NBA podcast, and you and Britt are talking about, I don't know, getting Kyle Moore at the nail and running more spread pick and roll and all these fancy terms. And then Rudy's like, what if we just shoot threes in front of Chris Finch? So like, what if we just play basketball in the second half in front of Micah Nori, like, so that we can hear what they're talking about more? It was kind of like the dumbest random way to solve what was a really glaring issue, because you can't be a contender if your offense is bottom 10 in the league. And again, it's a 5-6 game sample size, but to put up 120 for 4 straight games on the road for the first time in franchise history, and you have the defense, and that, like Ant said, Rudy's talking to them on that side of the court, like they got that covered. So maybe it is just a little tweak, but the young guys need to be closer to dad in the second half so that they can execute more of these sets, the things you've been calling for. But I don't know. That's like the best NBA story, man. That's just something so stupid that we were like trying to come up with all these clever ways to solve it. And it's just like, you know what? Let's just defer the kickoff until the second half, and we'll go the other way.
I was just looking at the 3-point volume over these last 6 games. You go back to the Orlando game that they lost. They still took almost half their shots were threes in that. The Houston game volume was down a little bit, but really high volume 3-point shooting game against Chicago. That's the game Carl took 16. The Milwaukee game was really high volume, and they made over half of them there too. The Clippers game was a well above average 3-point volume game for them, and also this Portland one. So it's like, I was like, okay, there's a pocket of like 6 games where they've taken more than 40% of their shots were 3-pointers. I'm just kind of like scrolling through the schedule, looking back, and there's one other time in the season where for 5-6 games in a row they really had a high volume of 3-point shots, and it was that time right after Thanksgiving, after that Sacramento game. The volume turned up on the threes for 2 weeks, and that was the 6-game winning streak right there. That kind of propelled them right before the death march in the schedule. You remember that?
Yep.
That was kind of like the peak of the season at that point. I think part of the answer is just with this team, and Rudy's been saying it for a couple weeks. It's shot selection. We just need it. We need to be taking more threes. We have the talent to be able to do that. I think particularly even just one more shooter in the rotation in Monte Morris. Like there's no reason this team can't consistently be a team who's shooting at least league average volume from three. I think they're like 24th in 3-point volume on the season. That matters, and I think it's good. I think it's good when something you need to add to your offense is also being reflected in wins. I think that ends up turning something into a habit, which is, again, what gives me some confidence that maybe this will sustain. And the first 6 games out of the All-Star break might look at like that too. Not just with the shot selection, but the turnovers as well. I think it's a meaningful thing.
Yeah, I do too. And I can't stop thinking about Nickeil. But I was, in terms of the offense and all this stuff, and you mentioned Monte Morris, who again played his second night tonight. He was kind of non-existent. I mean, he had that big
I just
three.
think that he's just going to be, he's kind of a blender inner. Like
Right. And again, I'm judging this man on 24 hours of 2 games and probably not a lot of sleep, but I was lucky enough tonight to I just sat next to Alan Horton, who does Wolves radio the whole game, and we were kind of talking during breaks, but Kyle's been so good now again and got his swagger back, as Finch said, and having other guards out there like Monte Morris. I think Nickeil, because everything to me is about Nickeil tonight, I think that allows him in my brain to play a little more off ball. I know Nickeil can in stints play a little backup point guard and put guys in the right spots, but now with Monte Morris in the fold and a rejuvenated Kyle Anderson, there's this team again has so many options, and I circle back to the beginning of this pod when I was talking about just 12 months ago, 13 months ago, these two franchises, the Timberwolves and the Blazers, were in such different arcs or paths. And to look at them now, I mean, all it took tonight for the Wolves was literally 3.5 minutes of good basketball to win, because they have so many options. They are addressing the things, the elephants in the room of the bad offense and the lack of ball movement. I mean, again, we saw in the second and third quarter when it got really, really one pass, maybe 2. It doesn't work that way. You know what I mean? And then another bugaboo for them is they didn't get the same fun whistle they had last night. Last night was let them play. Tonight was stop, 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 whistle, whistle, whistle. I mean, even Mike Conley was kind of frustrated. So they just have so many options. And when you get to the playoffs, you want to be able to have as many options as possible, because every game is completely different than the previous game. And with all the adjustments and the ways that teams throw different coverages and different sets, you're going to need all these guys. I mean, Mike talked about it too, and you asked him about, do you think the offense is turning a corner? And he's like, I do, but, we want to turn that corner and have this thing really humming when it matters the most, and that would be, 6-8 weeks from now. So improvements, again, yeah, they kind of stumbled through most of this game and kind of sleptwalked, but I don't know. I know I'm tired doing this pod at 1 a.m. on Valentine's Day, so I can't imagine how, Rudy Gobert feels, but they don't win this game last year, in my mind. They just don't, right? It's just another one of those times where they would have just dropped the ball and closed it out, and they have one more game coming up, and it seems like they really do care about collecting as many wins as possible. I don't know if the 1 seed in February is on their mind, but I know that they want to have, as Finch said, every advantage possible come playoff time, whether that be home court, whether that be the 1 seed, because that's what matters in 6-7 game series.
Coming up on the pod for sort of the rest of the week, just what the schedule is going to be is Britt and I are going to record on Wednesday afternoon, tomorrow afternoon, kind of get Britt's take maybe more so on this whole 5-game stretch where it seems like the Wolves are potentially sort of turning a corner offensively, clicking back into a rhythm of what they looked like earlier in the season. So that will be the next pod. That'll be up sometime Wednesday late afternoon, and then Kyle and I will cover the game again on Thursday here. The Wolves play the Blazers again. Obviously, we'll do one more of these late night pods and kind of take us into the All-Star break. I was thinking though, because I might do like one pod over All-Star break, but for the most part, kind of take that time off. I did want to mention that we do have a set of tickets to give away for the game on Saturday night, February 24th, against the Brooklyn Nets. I'm not going to get to mention it again that many times because we won't have that many pods before that game. But if you are a Patreon subscriber, do send us a message that you can go to that game. Again, it's a Saturday night game against Brooklyn, and we'll just pick someone at random for the pair of tickets from the Patreon subscribers. Do let us know though that you are available for that, and we'll select from the group of people who let us know that they are available. If you are not already a Patreon subscriber, you can become one. It's $5 a month. Helps fund the show, trips like this, and just being able to have all these guests on and cover these games, cover it throughout the season. That's in part made possible by the support of the show. So if you'd like to support the show, it's patreon.com/DaneMooreNBA, and sign up, send us a DM on Patreon that you are available for that game, and we will choose someone at random for 2 tickets to that game. We have a couple more for the rest at the very end of the month of February that we'll get to as well. But this is a cool thing that the Genesis company has helped us out with, is giving tickets to people to be able to go actually watch this team at Target Center. It's not cheap to be able to go watch a game. So send us a message at patreon.com/DaneMooreNBA. That's patreon.com/DaneMooreNBA. You got anything else?
All right, so we're going to do the Josh Minot segment, or
No,
he scored in 2 of the last 3 games. No, the Patreon thing, though, I mean, again, supporting Dane is a really big the amount of quotes and stuff you get tonight, like, there's not a lot of video. There's not a lot of people in the media room. Like, to get all those different quotes, I mean, Mike Conley had one of the funniest quotes ever when I asked him about, like, did you know you had 3 blocks in you? And he gave a very un-Mike Conley answer that was kind of like, yeah, like, I still got it. Like, age is just a number. Like, I'm bad. And he looked over at Nikhil across the locker room and was like, Nikhil knows, like, I have the best hands on the team. And it was just kind of a fun thing. But support the local journalists and beat reporters and writers and podcasters that are covering this team, because that's how in 2024 we're getting these fun quotes and these storylines. I mean, again, I bet you all Valentine's Day for sickos like me, we're all going to be talking about how the Wolves just changed directions and started shooting on the other baskets. So I think it's a cool way to support Dane. I think it's a cool way to get fans to the game, because we are now at, what are they, 37
and 16?
38 and 16.
38 16.
Not to get sappy on Valentine's, but like, we're slowly running out of regular season games. This is, without a doubt, the second best team in franchise history. It's not even close. These games are awesome. It's a really cool team, really cool coaches. So if you can get to a game after All-Star break, I highly recommend doing it. But just a fun 24, 27 hours for this team, a team that is not perfect, right? And I'm sure you'll find ways to talk about with Britt tomorrow, things they can improve, but a team that really, as a fan, gives you a little bit of hope that, like, they might, right? Like, it might be 5%, but they might have a chance to do something real cool here come April, come May, and God forbid June.
God forbid. He's Kyle Theige. You can follow him on Twitter at Kyle Theige. Him and Phil Mackey also recorded over at Score North, the Flagrant Howls podcast this afternoon. So get some more Phil and Kyle in your life there as well. Check out their show. Again, Kyle and I will be back to do a show after the game on Thursday night, and Britt and I will do a pod on Wednesday afternoon. Until then, he's Kyle. I'm Dane. Peace out.
How I'm feeling, man, I hope it never stop, yeah. Grinning hard so you can find me in the crowd, yeah, yeah. Don't let standards ever bring you down, yeah.